Good evening. Welcome to the Pearl Report. I'm Dinah Lin. For 21 years, people in 9 villages in Fan Ling blame a lard factory for stinking up their communities. It turns out the plant isn't even authorized to produce lard on public land. As producer Renato Reyes reports, the case puts the government front and center over its failure to solve this protracted olfactory problem.
I used to live in Probelm, and I have been dreaming to live in the countryside and have a small yard in front of my house for a long, long time.
Sherry Lee, freelance journalist and mother of 2 daughters.
5 years ago, I quit my job from the newspaper and moved here because I want fresh air for my children. What is this?
Volcano.
I want them to grow in nature. It's good for children's development. The view is really good. Lots of trees and greenery. Every morning you have lots of birds singing.
Almost perfect, except for one flaw.
When I first came here, I didn't notice the smell. And then later on, I started to pay attention. And then I felt it's really smelly. And I always think it's like some old woman baking some fat, or like having deep fried food, or like deep fried salty fish. And I only noticed it was from a lard production factory about a year ago. It just feels so uncomfortable because each breath of air is full of oil.
The Kun Fung factory makes lard in Tai Tong Wu village near Sherry's. It deep fries pig fat to produce lard and dried meat residue for export to the mainland and Taiwan. It's been doing that for 2 decades now. The lard is often used to make detergents, biodiesel or animal fodder.
That's the dense smoke emitted from the lard production.
Tang Ching lives near the factory.
If it's windy, the odor won't come. If there's no wind and the air stays trapped here, the gas will come down to the villages here. Smelling the intense odor of lard outside, I can't bear it and have to escape inside, close all the windows and turn on the air conditioner. The oily odor is the result of frying lard. It makes people nauseous and dizzy.
Up to 3,000 people live in 9 villages around the factory, 400 in Tai Tong Wu alone. Tang is one of 300 campaigning to have the factory kicked out of their community for causing a nuisance they say has never before been seen in this scale, and odor pollution affecting 9 villages for 21 years.
We're indigenous villagers who settled here in 1898. Every year we have 30 to 40% growth. You can see many new village houses have been built nearby. Many outside people have moved in. It's not fair to them either. It's incredible letting such a polluting factory exist here so close to us. It greatly affects our children.
Villagers are also outraged because the factory is not even authorized to produce lard on this government land. The factory's short-term tenancy, or STT, first issued in 1983, allowed it to rent the site for cow bone crushing. The STT is renewed every 3 months. The Lands Department found the factory was violating the lease all along when it applied in 1992 to amend land use to lard production. But it suspended action against the plant while the owner tried to satisfy government requirements for lard production, including anti-pollution measures. The suspension is still in force today.
It issued many warnings but hasn't imposed fines or ordered closure. It has always criticized the factory for being wrong.
Tang Lang Tong, 60, has lived here since birth. In March 2012, he complained about the Lands Department to the Ombudsman, which ruled on October that same year.
The Lands Department has failed to enforce the land lease and let the factory violate the land use during which the factory has infringed environmental and hygiene laws.
The lard factory has no license. Why do you let it operate? They breached the STT like this, and you still let them operate. The Ombudsman criticized it harshly.
Every 2 years, they send warning letters to the factory saying that they are against the land use listed in the short-term tenancy. But apart from that, they did nothing. Just warning letters since 1992. For 21 years, they did nothing to enforce the law. The law is they're breaking land use.
The Lands Department has ignored all attempts to get its side on this issue. Lo Wai Kit is the factory's owner.
I didn't say I won't talk.
But he refused to talk on camera.
This used to be a cow bone crushing plant. But cow bone crushing lost its commercial value due to the mad cow disease. About 20 years ago, we applied to the government to switch to lard.
In 1999, the factory put in place anti-pollution measures and secured a special process license from the Environmental Protection Department for lard production, considered an offensive trade. But in the next 2 years, the EPD fined it 9 times for pollution, for failing to maintain odor-free smoke emissions and clean up oily fumes.
So we ceased production in 2002 and renovated for 30 months to comply with EPD emission standards. I've licenses for emission and water and a food and hygiene department license. We comply with all government departments, buildings, lands.
The EPD renewed Lo's special process license in 2003 after it checked the factory's problems had been rectified. In a statement, the EPD says,
"The factory operator had since demonstrated satisfactory compliance with regulatory requirements over the last decade."
Lo's current license is valid until 2016. The only question left is whether Lands Department should give the factory a short-term tenancy for lard production. Hoping to forestall such a move, villagers took a preemptive strike.
That's why he had a protest to give some pressure to the government. We are afraid the Lands Department will give a legal short-term tenancy to the factory. Suddenly, the factory owner came out, and we were all so angry.
On December 5th last year, residents and lands and environmental officials reached a compromise in a meeting organized by legislator Emily Lau.
What we agreed to do at the joint meeting was an inspection with the government officials and the villagers and see how bad things are, because the villagers kept complaining that things were bad.
And the residents are given the chance to build their case against the factory before the Lands Department decides on Lo's STT application.
Lands Department is really the final gatekeeper on this, and we've got to convince Lands Department that issuing a new short-term lease would really be a disaster for Dai Tong Wu and the surrounding villages.
Up next, after the break, why residents say the factory has got to go?
The doctor told me if the air you inhale causes you discomfort, your obstructive pulmonary problem would worsen.
So I've seen smoke coming out after 6 o'clock.
Stay with us.